welcome everyone. I'm Rajneesh Gupta, and this is our mock interview series. And we have Jemin for this mock interview session. He will be the interviewer, and I'll be the candidate. So, as you know the process, he will be asking me question, and I'll keep answering him. Before we go ahead and get started with the mock interview session, make sure you subscribe the channel. And if you are an existing subscriber, press the bell icon so that you get notified immediately. All right. So let's get started. How are you, Jamin?
I'm good, Rajneesh. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you so much. Yeah.
So, Rajneesh, today's my question is on security control.
Okay.
What are security controls?
Uh-huh. So, well, security controls are like measures. It is a measure implemented to secure the information, data, maybe system, network infrastructure. This is to this controls can be technical in nature, can be administrative in nature, or can be physical in nature as well. So, for example, we can have biometric or physical access control, card-based access control for preventing unauthorized access to the data center. So that's where we will use the physical access control. Now we can even categorize in a different other categories as well. Like it could be preventive in nature, it could be detective in nature, or it could be responding to the security incident as well. So preventing, you ensure that what happened, you prevent those unauthorized access. When we talk about detective, you focus more on understanding, visualizing, and monitoring than actually preventing it at the first place. Preventing preventive security controls includes firewalls, it includes your IPS, it includes your antivirus software, it includes the access controls like multi-factor authentication, two-factor authentication to stop any unauthorized access to the network. Whereas if you talk about the detective controls, this is where we have security monitoring tool like SIM solutions, we have IDS software, we have EDR, XDR solutions as well in the network. There is also what we call corrective controls as well, which is like a process where we talk about the incident response procedures, disaster recovery procedures, let's say how to mitigate impact of any security incident. So we got a data breach. Now what next? Okay, we got a ransomware attack. What next? So this is what happened in the corrective controls, where we perform the recovery, restoration of impacted asset in the network. So yeah, these are security controls. Yeah.
Okay, good. Got it.
Yeah.
So, Rajneesh, how you are going to prioritize these controls?
Sure. So prioritizing the control happen based on the risk. Uh, in most of the organization, or I would say in mature organizations, uh, the prioritize security controls are prioritized based on the proper risk management process, or I would say the risk assessment, where we start with understanding what asset we have, what priority assets we have. Okay, and then we look at the threats. Okay, what kind of all possible threat we can expect for this specific asset. Maybe it's a web server, or maybe it's customer data stored on a web server. So my job is to understand what kind of a possible threat I could have. Maybe if it is located in the DMZ environment, so I could possibly have DDoS attack, right? I could possibly have a web-based attack. If it is in the network itself, in the private environment, I could have possibly some advanced threat, which could be based on active directory based attack, lateral movement, or maybe privilege escalation kind of threat, or maybe a threat attempt. Then I look at the vulnerability. I need to understand what kind of a possible vulnerability I have. Based on it, I'll calculate two important parameters. I'll calculate the likelihood of the attack and the impact of the threat. Based on this, I get the risk value. And if I have higher risk, probably usually organization measure the risk based on high, medium, low, or you can also number it from 1 to 10, 1 to 5 as well. So if it has a higher risk value, so I can plan for its controls, right? But for instance, let's say it's a different story. It's a more calculated approach. But if, let's say, your job is to get into the financial, you are working for a financial institution, right? So for you, the data, the confidentiality is paramount. Okay. So you have no choice but to look at the data every time. You have to make sure the encryption, is in place. The data encryption is in place. You have to look at the data loss prevention technique. You have to look at the uh, access control, who can access the data. Only least privilege access will be done. Only those who are, really need access to this data should be accessed it. Or, it should be least privilege method only. Okay. And it will ensure that we protect our sensitive information from any unauthorized access as well. We should also focus on detective control and security monitoring, IDS, and everything. So that's how we prioritize the security controls in any organization. So yeah.
So, Rajnish, you must have implemented this controls, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, how do you ensure that these controls are effectively implemented and monitored? And yes, also how it maintained in the organization.
Okay. Uh, that's a great question. I mean, well, that's a more of a security audit activity. Okay. Because
Mhm.
the job of a security auditor or internal auditor is to ensure that if the security controls exist, and if it exists, is it really effectively in use. Okay. So
Mhm.
the most effective way is to conduct a regular security assessment, risk assessment, to identify any gaps in existing controls. We have to collaborate with different stakeholders to implement those controls. Monitoring control performance through different metrics as well. So that is also important. If to verify if these controls are effectively in place. For example, I recently worked in a project where I led the implementation of multi-factor authentication for all the remote access VPN, and even inside the network as well. Some of the critical resources, web servers, and all the portal inside the network as well. We already had it for our 365 based application, the SaaS based application. So to ensure the effectiveness of the control, I worked in the training program where I educated all the internal employees about ensuring that the MFA is in place, and making sure how do they use it. Uh, Even if some instance if they don't see the MFA being in place, they should immediately report to the IT admin that we got some problem with it. But I worked in making sure all the application that they are using, maybe it's a shadow IT applications, they have to make sure they are using the MFA in those situations. So these are some of the way we can effectively implement it. We can also make sure we monitor, but in order to make sure we maintain it, we monitor it properly, education training program is very very important, and we have to go through a routine audit program as well. So yeah, that's the way it should be done. Yeah.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Rajnish, this is all I have for today. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
All right. Sure, sure. So thank you so much, everyone. This is all I have for today as well. So thank you so much, Jamin, for having me here. This is me, Rajneesh
You're
Gupta, with
welcome.
Jamin Patak. Bye for now.